when you first set out to jump onto YouTube and do anything, and kind of let your voice be heard, and sharing some information about that, what was the inspiration behind that? Were you finding things that you were looking for on YouTube not available, or were you just feeling like, hey, I can probably do this and do this, in a way that I think people will respond? Because personally, when I started to run into some of your videos and stuff, I was just like blown away by your kind of down to earth elegance to the fact that I'm just here to talk to you, and I'm humble enough to say I don't know it all. And that's kind of always been my approach. Is I try to put videos out that aren't overly produced or overly edited. I know sometimes that has to happen, or maybe just for the sake of goofing around and wanting to edit a video, it's fun to try it. But for the most part, I just try to say, look, this is something you might find helpful. If not, no big deal. But I never go into it with the approach of I know more than everybody else, and I don't spend a lot of time with a camera in my face for, just the reason that, and this hopefully doesn't come off wrong, because I don't have anything against it, but it just seems like the image of like a studio full of $1 million worth of keyboards, and look at all my high-end speakers, and that makes me a better producer. Not necessarily. I mean, but I have nothing against that, because I follow certain guys that that's the elements. But for me, it's more like I just want somebody to push play and say, hey, look, this is a pretty cool video. It got kind of right to the point, and it was helpful for me. And I just wonder kind of what influenced you to say, okay, I'm going to put out some tutorials and move in this direction and start to help people.
Yeah, I guess at the time that I decided I was going to do it, that was not that far removed from leaving college, mostly because of like cost reasons. Yeah. And I was starting to see just how expensive things were, like academic wise, for knowledge that I felt should be free, number one. Number two is kind of what you're talking about. I was really frustrated with what I felt like, and this is just personal opinion, the just bold-faced lies in the marketing of like music production tutorials that you would come across. Like everybody like me too. It's like, yeah, I've paid for some of those things, and you watch and you're like, holy crap, I just got like completely. And and it was very frustrating to kind of experience that, and to see then, like you're saying, people advertising like, okay, here are your secret strategies to this end. It's like, no, there's no such thing as a secret strategy. There's no such thing as anything special to the other. It's just about time, practice, patience, perseverance. And I just felt like from watching videos, it was always more about the person presenting it was always me. I've done this, I've done that.
Exactly. That's my biggest frustration is I've got a camera on my face and I want you to hear my voice. And the first part of the tutorial was like 3 minutes of whatever. And then the last 30 seconds were not even helpful according to the title. I just started to shake my head. And I don't want to come off as negative, because if you're sharing the love of music, which we both do, I think it's important that you have the ability to share it however you wish. But I think you and I are kind of feeding off of a similar point there, that, there's maybe a slightly more
there's motives behind it, like devious intentions. Exactly. And that's where, when the title is misleading, it's very frustrating. And I think for me, the main reason to set out and do it was, number one, I personally don't think that music comes that easy to me. In fact, comparatively to tennis, and I'm a tennis instructor, I'm more qualified to teach tennis than I am to teach music. I'm a much better tennis player than I am a tennis coach. And in the case of music, I would say I'm a much better teacher than I am a music maker. I'm not a very good producer. I'm terrible at it, really. Yeah. But in terms of teaching, because I'm so bad at it, I think that's kind of where it works, because for things that they don't just click to me instantly, I really have to dive in there and like figure it out and think about it. And then it's useful for people to then say, oh, okay, yeah, so this guy, it doesn't come easy for him. He's not taking anything for granted. He's going to cover it. And for some people, that's annoying because they do have the background. But if you don't, it's useful to know, oh, okay, there's somebody else like me. And the whole reason of going on YouTube and doing it partly was, you learn something so much better when you're able to teach it. So I knew that, okay, I'm actually going to get really good at this program if I force myself to sit down and make these videos and try to teach other people how to use it. I'm like a big believer in that. And the second thing is too, and this is true for like the other website I do, is if I can do it, you can definitely do it. And so it's just about motivation more than anything else. As a tennis coach, motivation more than anything else, because you're going to go out there, you're going to have bad days. Same thing with making music. You're going to go in there, you're going to get nothing done, but you can go back, you can try again, you'll get a little bit better. So for me, making the videos, it's honestly more about motivation than it is about trying to teach and say, here are secret weapons. Secret weapons implies that if you don't have those, you're not going to be able to make the music. If you don't have the perseverance and the passion and the patience and to know that other people are going through the same growing pains, you're going to give up because you're going to assume, oh, I have these secret weapons and I still can't make the music I want to make. What's the problem? I need more secret weapons. So I think what I wanted was I've never seen any videos, or I never saw anybody go out there telling people that, look, it's going to be difficult. I'm not going to be able, I can't solve your problems for $50 in an hour tutorial. That's not how it works. I'll give you this information for free, and I want to see if you can use it and then make music that I would never be able to make. That, for me, at the end of the day, is what makes me the happiest, is to know that maybe somewhere down the line, somebody will come across one of my videos. They'll be so much more musically inclined than I am. It will come so much more naturally to them. They had some growing pains, but hopefully, thanks to some of my videos and other videos that are out there, they worked through them, and then boom, they're now making this great music, and I would be so happy for that person. I don't want anything in return. It's just good to know that maybe you've inspired somebody to do something that you couldn't do. And I just think that more so the mindset of a lot of tutorials, and especially the paid stuff, is this is how great I am. Maybe you can be as good as me one day. No, I'm the opposite. I want you to do better than me. And I know many people can. So I couldn't
say it better myself, to be honest with you, Brian. I mean, you hit the nail on the head perfectly there. It really is about that casual feedback that I get every once in a great while. And it's one of the simplest videos I put up, and I would think that's been maybe covered in other directions or other scenarios, but here's my point of view on it. And then to see that feedback where somebody's like, oh my God, that opened up so many avenues mentally and opened up doors I couldn't think of otherwise. And then that's those little pieces along the way early, because some of my earlier videos, honestly, I'm half tempted to delete them because I'm still learning microphone setup, feedback, and how to actually talk when you're doing something, because I'm so used to just doing it.
It's very hard.
When you actually get a positive feedback or somebody say something nice about it, it's like motivation to keep going. And then you start to, like you said, I started to find myself actually learning things that I thought I already knew. I'll be like, oh, I can do a little segment on this. And then as I do it and try to talk about doing it, I start to learn something. And I'm like, wow, this is really helpful in two ways. I'm helping someone else and I'm learning along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always wrong to assume that you are the all-knowing person on a subject, that there's no room for you to improve and get better. Yeah. And that's what I find too, exactly like you were saying. Even with the most recent videos I've been doing, it was like I set out to cover certain things, and then along the way it was like, oh crap, let me stop the video, let me explore this further, and then I'll come back into it once I get a grasp on it. And sometimes too, personally, with the new stuff in Bitwig, all of this MIDI time code and all of these things, personally, it's not relevant to me, and I don't even understand it. So it's I encourage people then to say, hey, if you do get it, please write it in the comments, because not only are you teaching me, but you're teaching everybody else. Exactly. I don't want to come out and be like, okay, this is what this is used for, and this is what that's used for. That really pigeonholes it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be learned within that MIDI stuff, and there's quite a few of those little new additions that even within their manual, it's not descriptive enough to understand it. So I've been monkeying around with it, and I'm like, I'm not getting it. So I just keep waiting for someone else to show us or tell us. So
yeah, I'm in exactly the same camp there. The manual, I don't know if you used Bitwig when it was version 1.0.
I did. Actually,
and the manual was about 85 pages. And it explained absolutely nothing. And so that was part of the reason for why I think I did some of those videos, was the manual gives you 2 sentences that are so generic. And it's improved immensely with version 2, I think. But at that time, it was sort of okay, I'm reading this in text and it's not clicking at all. And this is coming from having worked in Ableton for a few years and thinking that it's supposed to be almost identical, but it really isn't. The more you look at it, the more different you kind of see things are. And the fact that then it opens up different creative possibilities for you. It's all about working to the strengths of something, exploiting something that's going to work for you, not focusing on why it doesn't work. I think is big. I think that's an important lesson for people working with Bitwig right now, as well as, focus on the cans, not on the can-nots. Like, that's how Bill Belichick and the Patriots are so successful. He's not going to ask a player to do something they can't do. He's going to focus on what they can do. And I'm going way philosophical here and dropping Billy Belichick.
No, it's good advice though, because you got to perform, or allow it to perform to what it's strong at, and try not to manipulate it into its weak area, because then you just get frustrated with the whole process.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, agreed.
So in thinking of what you were doing with Bitwig earlier, I'm kind of curious, and correct me on the pronunciation, but I'm kind of curious what the motivation was to go off into your website there. And is it Sormina or Sormena?
I say Sormena, but you can say Sormena, it however the hell you want. It doesn't matter. I'm actually, and since we're figuring out the pronunciation, what is there a definition to that word? It's the Basque word for creativity. But
so I didn't realize that.
It flowed off the tongue the best of any sort of, because I was looking, okay, how do you say creativity in a lot of different languages? And that was the one that kind of stuck out the most to me. In hindsight, I probably should have called it like music teaching school, elite class. But no, I mean, I'm happy with it.
And honestly, no, it's fine, because that's a good thing. Like, you look at my channel, I didn't list it up there as like, it's Martini Lounge, and I'm not like an alcoholic. I'm not promoting martinis, but I just wanted something to me that sounded, because I perform more often than not in lounge settings. So I wanted something that sounded relaxing.
Yeah, it's a cool vibey name, and you got the cool picture as well. So there's me playing tennis in mine. So
I often wondered when I was when you and I started communicating about having our interview and just chatting, I often wondered what that tennis element was, and I know you've spoke about it several times. So I'd talk a little bit more about your website, and then I want to ask you a little bit about this tennis pro career you've got.
Okay. Yeah, it's really exciting.
But tell me a little bit more about what motivated the Sormena.
Yeah, I mean, for me, what I realized was there's a huge amount of resources out there that are so software specific, and I realized, okay, you know what, this YouTube channel, it might as well just be software specific to Bitwig. Like, let's just keep it that way. Let's not try to branch out and do other things. And then I figured with the website, what I could do is I could try to make more generic courses that go focus more on broader concepts and less on specific software. And that's really the intention of that website. Those tutorials are for hopefully users of anything. That's the idea. And it's sort of then broader concepts that wouldn't maybe fit so well on the YouTube channel, but that can fit on more of a website and not maybe alienate people because they don't use X software or Y software. So in the first course, we use like the browser application, Soundation, audio tool. And in the second course, which is really, it's like 27 hours or something. In the second course, it's all like freeware plus a DAW of your choosing, because really once you load plugins in, your DAW does all the basic things. And that's kind of the idea was let's go and try to focus on the broader concepts, like really hammer down the fundamentals for people. And so hopefully then you could work with any software, or even if it wasn't software, you would have a shot at it. I don't know to what level of success I've done, but that was the intention.
I think it's, for me, I think the benefit that you may have thought of on your own, or maybe I'm bringing it to you for the first time, but you're actually providing a platform where maybe a user or a follower or whatever you want to refer to it as can come in and voice a question without feeling the repercussions of maybe a million YouTube users commenting negative things below that. So in that platform where you're at, if there's a question or a concern that maybe they don't have the courage to ask in a comment field on YouTube, that's allowing a different opportunity for that voice to be heard, without feeling like, oh man, I must be stupid if I'm asking this.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've actually been very surprised at, like, I put up my email address under like, business inquiries and, made it very clear that this is not for business inquiries. Like you can email me with whatever. I've been surprised with the number of emails I've actually received from people asking questions. And when that occurs, I keep it in the emails, right? You keep it private that way. So, I've actually been really surprised about that. There's been a very large number of those. So
I've gotten quite a few myself, actually, just from my email contacts that I have linked to things where it's like, hey, I didn't want to comment because I don't want everybody, I'm too embarrassed to say, but can you help me with this or that? And I do the same thing. I just keep it in the email and, try to be, sometimes I'll respond, be like, honestly, you're asking something I haven't learned yet, or I'll be happy to do some research and try to follow up with you. But more often than not, it's something that's pretty simple or, something, at least from my perspective, I can figure out and answer, in an email. So I think it's important that those kind of opportunities and formats exist because, I think maybe the, average newbie or average new person coming in might not be willing to ask the question, that maybe they really need answers to.
Yeah, and it's nice to know too, especially with YouTube channels, especially YouTube channels that aren't like massively big. The nice thing is it's very possible to interact with somebody and get back to them pretty quickly and form that bond. I mean, the internet now, obviously, it's transformed into a real beast and a real monster. And it feels like the more you look at everything's just becoming monetized out the gazoo. Or, you go to a website and it blocks you out for whatever reason. You're going for like journalism websites. So the great thing I think about our channels that we have in common is that this is still a place where the internet can be a force of good, where people are coming together with a common interest, check the political stuff at the door, everything else, and we can all focus on something we enjoy and interact together and create more of a community. Like maybe once or twice has there been an argument that's taken place in my comment sections, but that's been it. And so it's so different to when you look at any article online and within about 3 or 4 comments down, it's this huge chain of hate. I think that there on YouTube especially, there's still a large number of channels, the smaller ones that haven't gone too big and really kind of, corporate shilled it, where it feels still so much like we're also, I don't know how to explain it really in good terms, but
it's more personable. I know personally I wonder to myself, like as the channel grows, I'm going to continue to follow that course and try to be as serviceable as possible and I try to reply, if I get comments or questions, I try to answer them as best I can. And like you said, I think maybe once or twice I've gotten a few negative things, but usually my negative things, at least in these early stages, are about, well, maybe your microphone isn't good enough or speak up a little bit more and things like that. And I'm like, hey, I get it. I'm not afraid to say I know I'm still going through, a learning curve on some of that, because when I originally started doing all the studio stuff, I never set it up to have a microphone and speak and worry about feedback. And I set it up to jam out on some beats and play loud music. So,
I mean, the annoying thing for me is that I do have to do it in headphones and then in a microphone. And so that's a real let, especially I just did a video on like pan law, and like pan law in headphones means like nothing. Like it's about speakers. It's about how the speakers are so it's like really hard then to be like, okay, this is what you're hearing, but in reality, I'm not hearing that at all.
Exactly. And you're wondering, did I get that right? Or is this right? And then you listen back and you're like, oh man, I got to do it again. So
yeah, exactly. I think what works well between our two channels is that on your channel, you dive a lot more into genre-based stuff. I think there was a video on there was a deep house video. There was I was just looking at it a little while ago, and you go, okay, start to finish with these tracks. First of all, I'm interested to know sort of what the feedback is like on those from people that are watching them, and also how difficult it is to make those videos where you're doing that, because I know whenever I try to do something like that, I stop talking and I start having to focus on making music, and there's no way I could ever do something like that. So I'm interested to know the challenges and how you've overcome those.
Great question. And it's kind of one of the things we spoke about earlier is that's still the learning curve of as I'm doing that, because what you're seeing more often than not, when you see one of those start to finish or where I just built a groove, you're just seeing what the years of experiences, how I actually do things. Like if you were standing looking over my shoulder in the studio, like I just start, I'll grab the kick, I'll grab some of those things. But what I haven't taught myself is, okay, there's a mic on, tell them what you're doing, because I'm already thinking, okay, I've got to pull an EQ, I've got to get a compressor. I'm thinking like 6 steps ahead to a sound that I've already brought in. So I've got to teach myself to actually go ahead and say what I'm doing. And then there are some videos where I decided maybe there was an audience out there that was international and maybe didn't speak English as a first language. So I thought maybe what might help me if I just put a few videos out where there is no commentary, on purpose, where they can just watch the process and not worry about hearing a language spoke over it that's maybe confusing as they follow along. I know there was some really cool videos that I found, international videos I was like, man, I really like what they're doing, but sometimes the language barrier for what they were chatting about kind of threw me off a little bit. So I thought maybe I should try to put out a few videos like that. As far as feedback, the start to finish or building the grooves, nothing but positive so far. I haven't had anybody really say anything other than, man, this has helped me a lot, or that process or arranging things in that way has helped. And every time I do those, I try to do them in one take. So I usually, you can see I try not to edit things. You'll see that I'm moving from an OBS over to the, at the beginning of the videos, I try to show people that this is one take, and if there's a mistake, you're going to get to witness it with me, because I'm not going to edit it out unless it's horrible or it's a
20-minute thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Or if I get stuck looking, and that's the bad thing for me. Sometimes I'll get so deep into the process, I'll get stuck looking for a sound and realize, man, I should have just picked one and moved on. It's not really about, because then like I'll get motivated to think, wow, this is actually turning out pretty decent. I might want to keep it as a long-term project.
Oh yeah. And as a challenge to force yourself to get it to work, that's actually always a really good thing to do. It's like, all right, I'm going to close my eyes and blindly pick a snare and let's see if this snare is going to work.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, the start to finish, I mean, I've got a few of them. Most of them are I just kind of like say, okay, here's how to build the groove, because sometimes I think it's important. And I know in the early days, I was always trying to figure out, how do these elements need to be syncopated amongst each other, or where do they need to be situated in the bar to complement each other? So I started doing a lot of those groove tutorials and figuring that if you can get this far in this tutorial, building it the rest of the way shouldn't be terribly difficult. So, and my thought early on was like, okay, let's put out a series of groove building tutorials and then maybe come back to those same projects down the road and say, okay, here's the groove that we built, way back when. Let's show you how I would pull it out into a complete track. But I haven't really followed up on that too much. I mean, it's still a thought since I have those out there. But basically, I usually just hit record on a screen capture and just go for it. And if it's a video I'm happy with, I'll go ahead and put it out there. And sometimes I'll put it out and realize, okay, that's complete garbage, and I'll just take it back. So, but start to finish and kind of going through that, I think for me, it's the most enjoyable part of it, because you're actually not seeing me focus so much on the language and explaining something, as opposed to just like, here's a process that works for me individually, and maybe it's a production method that you wouldn't have thought of on your own if you didn't see somebody do it that way. So
a final question I'd probably have for you would be the inspiration question. What got you into making music, and what are you really listening to right now? Because I know for me, it's been a weird evolution to now the things that I listen to kind of learn from would be almost embarrassing to admit, but I personally find them like the most polished. So it's interesting. Like the stuff I listen to versus the stuff I make, they're not even that similar anymore, just over time. But just real curious about that on your end.
Yeah. If I jump in the car right now, like if anybody was here and said, oh, let's go get a coffee or just drive down the street and actually turn the car on, it would be on AM sports radio. That's a sad irony. I think some of that element comes from the fact that when I am home and doing stuff in the studio, it's just so music, so much. And it's experimental to the sense that what can I produce? But if I'm going to pick like an artist that, if I had a CD to throw in, or like if I wanted to go in the studio and just have some background music playing throughout the house, it's Addicts. I don't know if you're familiar. He's a deep house artist out of Greece. ADDEX, Addicts. He has a real chill, electronic, experimental kind of vibe, and he has his own unique sound that's so inspirational to me. As far as what I don't really try to emulate it under productions, but I try to use the organic nature of his style to influence what I want to do. So that's an artist that really stands out as someone I listen to. Now, on the other spectrum of that, more commercial stuff that you might hear radio oriented. 1975, the band 1975, I think it's got some really, really good stuff out that kind of inspires me. That would be one that stands out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually with you. I think in terms of if I'm going in the car, I also am probably going to have it on like the sports talk channel, or I plug in like a sports podcast or something like that. So I guess at a certain point, you kind of have to switch off from some of the music things, or I don't know. It's weird. I mean, I'm like that with you, so it's interesting.
Yeah, it's just turning it off basically, because in my car it's like that. Especially if my son, like I have a 6-year-old, I've told you that through the emails, but if my son's with me, it's usually he's got his iPad synced to the Bluetooth in the car, and I'm listening to the Trolls movie or whatever the most popular, whatever he wants to watch, or some Star Wars cartoon Lego thing. I don't know, but so I don't even really, outside of whatever music's in that actual video element, it's just kind of random, whatever. But as soon as he gets in the car, he's like, if I'll try to cheat sometimes and just leave the radio on and drive off, and he'll be going, I can't hear it. And what he's really wanting is the Bluetooth link so he can hear it in surround sound.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, my goodness, man, where's this headed? Because this might be, he's taking control of the situation. But
thank goodness I'm so poor and drive a 2001 Monte Carlo.
Well, yeah, in that case, you should be, because I'm telling you this stuff.
Bluetooth. What?
My son, man. Yeah. My son, he knows right away if it's not linked to the speakers, he can't hear it. And I'm like, you can hear it just fine. I can hear it.
So does he enjoy your music? Do you have him listen?
He does. He does. He'll just come in and he makes sounds to the kick drum and stuff where he'll just go, pss, 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 pss,
oh, cool.
And walk away laughing at me. Yeah. But he has a little keyboard, just a real child type keyboard in his room, and it has like color coded little sticker dots, and he has a music book that says this color responds to this note, and he'll play stuff like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star and little nursery rhyme things.
Classics.
He's somewhat fascinated with it, because he actually performs it in a way that it's very rhythmical. So I think there might be some sort of love of music, but for what he hears me doing and what I'm doing, and usually he'll open up the door to the room and just go rah, and make noise, thinking I'm talking on the mic, and run away laughing. So
okay, yeah. I mean, he's going to prefer his Star Wars still, as of now.
Yeah, he's kind of often, he's an artist. To be honest with you, he'll draw and paint and do that stuff all day. But I don't think music is a strong influence for him as of yet. So
and I know I'm actually more of a visual learner that way in terms of growing up. For me in college, it was more film and art history things.
That seems to be his love, is video, and just, we've got him these big poster boards and a little easel, and he'll just do water paints and really creative stuff. I mean, it's amazing what the freedom of a child's mind, because he's not restricted by politically correctness.
He has no idea. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's always great to see.
There's oftentimes my wife and I will be like, we've got to throw that away. Maybe it has some sort of sexual connotation to it that he isn't aware of. We're like, oh, that doesn't look good at all.
A little Freudian.
Yeah, exactly.
But I actually, this year, my mom is a preschool teacher, and I went into the preschool because she was like, we're really having a tough time. We need somebody to come in to distract them. I was like, all right, come in and talk a little bit about what it is you do. And my mom, she doesn't understand at all the music stuff. So I was kind of that's not a good idea. I can't bust out I can't bust out a Beethoven piano sonata or anything like that. I can pretend to play it and have the MIDI going. But I went in there with the intention of being okay, I have a couple of contact libraries that have a lot of crazy graphics. Maybe I'll just swing some things around. And I can honestly say it went terrible. It didn't go particularly well, but I felt at the end of it, there may be a couple of kids who were really interested, because I had the speaker set up and doing pan things left to right and having them kind of track it, and obviously recording their voices and letting them hear it and hear how we could kind of twist it and mangle it a little bit. Some of them, it freaked them out, but some of them seemed really into it. So I think what I learned from that is you can really even start to introduce these things at a pretty young age, and there'll be a couple who maybe really get into it, which is all you can ask for. And that's the same thing with everything we do. I'm happy with just one person really learning something new and using it.
I just had this crazy image of you teaching Bitwig to preschoolers. Dude, that would be awesome.
That's basically what it was. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Just pull up, enlarge the oscilloscope and show them, look, this is what's happening.
Yeah. That's what I tried to do, but they weren't like even all that interested in that. It was more like, all right, fine. Like I'll play Frozen for you and we'll like change it. But they like don't like it. Like the thing that they really hate, and I don't know why there must be, I'm sure there's like a reason, like a biological reason for this, but if you take their voice and then like, you turn it more into like, you repitch it, you shift it, you do some stuff with it, it like really freaks them out. Like they don't like that that's not their voice anymore. Like it seems like it's a hard thing for them to understand. I don't know the reasoning, the psychology behind it, but I learned a lot of things. Like they like drums a lot. And like, I'm not like a big drums person in the music I make. I'm more of, harmony type stuff. But so it was just, it was very interesting. Like I did like a remix of like the Frozen song, like Let It Go on the fly. And in my head, I was like, damn, like this is fantastic. Like I'm doing a really good job. And they're all just like, where's Olaf? Like play it this way.
You messed it all up.
Yeah,
That's not
exactly.
the way it's supposed to be.
Exactly. So it was like that was a really interesting experience. I don't know if I'm going to do that again because it really didn't go that well. Because it takes time for things to load. It's like, okay, now this plugin is loading. Like, do they understand any of this? No. But yeah, it was interesting.
That is just the concept of that is like, that is awesome, man. Just can you imagine if like 18, 20 years from now, one of those kids what is all of a sudden like the next Deadmau5 or whoever like this great live artist, and it's like, oh, well, where'd you get started? When I was in preschool, there was a guy that came in and showed us Bitwig.
Yeah, this weird guy came in and he started lip syncing and it was all sorts of crazy stuff. But
that would be awesome, dude.
With me and you, like our approach coming into the program and the music that we're trying to make or want to make, it's like the opposite. So that's where it's so useful to see, oh, okay, this is how this person employs this.
It's not a repeat of the same thing.
Yeah, it will be totally different. That's sort of what Bitwig is all about. It's like, how do you use it for what you're trying to do and accomplish?
And honestly, when I saw the direction you were going with how well you were explaining things, I purposely went into more of that. Here's how you create a groove. Here's how it can practice. Like you said, here's kind of the things that you're learning from other channels, maybe Brian specifically, but here's how it actually applies to creating, a structured track or a groove. And I started going in that direction just to kind of carve out that smallest of niches and not sound overly repetitive. And of course, there's going to be times where things cross over and it's within a tutorial, it may be a similar subject, but I try not specifically to voice that same opinion. I try to have some sort of differential element to it. So
and I know with what I tell people on like the Sormano website, more so than on the Bitwig one, is everybody is going to feel a different connection with like different instructors, and it's not about finding the best instructor. It's about because that doesn't exist. It's about finding the best instructor for you personally. So it's always good to go out and search out the other opinions and search out the other videos, because there's a good chance that you're going to click more with that person than in this case. Let's say you're clicking with me or whoever. Yeah, I mean, I think the only reason I even can do these tutorials somewhat well is that, like, as a tennis coach, like my number one thing, that
benefits you.
My number one thing is having to be supportive and positive. Like I have to be the biggest cheerleader for everybody I work with, because otherwise they'll quit and they won't keep playing. So I take the same approach to music, because that's the way I have to do it for myself to actually keep going in there and making it. I have to tell myself, like, you're going to do better. You're going to get better. You're going to learn these different things. And it's helped a lot. Like, really, like I feel so much more confident making music than I did when I started making these courses, despite already having a lot of previous experience. I never had somebody say like, oh yeah, you're going to get better. Like, cause we all do go through like the same growing pains when we're making music, and you have to get through that. And it's useful when people are telling you, especially people who are really good. Like, I don't know, like I assume somebody like Deadmau5 wouldn't do this, but somebody to come out and openly admit, like, yeah, it was a struggle at times. Like I struggled and like, I don't know, you're probably not familiar with the producer from South Korea, but his name is like Brave Sound. And he said something that really like kind of stuck with me. He was like, yeah, when I made that decision, it was like months and months of 12 hours in front of it, just making crap, just like not even knowing what I was doing. And eventually I got there, but you can't circumvent that process, that stage to the process. No, you have to
put your hours in. I agree.
And it's going to be hard.
There was a lot of hours where I'm just like, what the heck? How do you do anything? Yeah. And then, but you don't you had Joe Walsh, the musician from the Eagles and on his own career, has a saying that I saw in an interview he had with, I think like Daryl Hall or somebody. Joe Walsh said that you have to put, no matter who you are as a musician, artist, or a music engineer, you have to put your 10,000 hours in. And I was like, yeah, he's right. He's like, the problem nowadays is you've got too much computer-based kids in their bedroom that want to put 1 hour in. And he said it's really bringing down the level of quality. And when I heard that interview, I agreed.
Oh, yeah. And what's amazing is, like, I've seen with your videos, you know, you put together something so amazing in like an hour and a half that would probably take me like 10 or 15 hours. But that proves, what that really proves is that you have the experience. Like, it's possible for you to do that because you've really put in the time. That's really what that does. I think, especially with music production and making music, I believe that anybody can get pretty good results even on their first time out if you put in the time for it. But eventually you start to learn how to make it so much quicker. You're not wasting time, and you can do it in like an hour or an hour and a half, and you can get there. That to me is kind of like the biggest difference. Of before, it might be, this is taking weeks and weeks and weeks. I always tell the people who are on my site when they ask, it's like, it shouldn't be taking you more than 2 weeks to finish anything. You know, if it's taking longer than that, something is gone amiss. Or just finish it quickly and move on to the next thing, whatever.
The key there is finish. You have to, even if it's crap, just finish the crap, because then what you've taught yourself is not just how to start something, how to complete it. Because then once you've learned the how to get to the end of it, every time, even if it's garbage and you know you're going to delete it, the benefit there is the start becomes so much quicker. And actually, what I'm doing in those tutorials, I don't even do if I'm working on a track I want to try to get released. I've got so many templates that are already like this. They're already those grooves. I have them labeled this soulful groove, this groove, that groove, and I'll just go to that template in Ableton and bring over those pieces I want, and I'll start, for lack of a better term, I'll start like just mixing and matching elements that are already developed until I find how best those maybe 12 or 20 work, and then that becomes the product I try to polish and finish. But I can do that in like, I can probably do something like that in like 30 minutes. I can get right to almost an end product.
Yeah, you make such a good point. Like, there are thousands and thousands in music production of great starters. There are a handful of great finishers.
You have to finish, man. It's such an easy thing to overlook, because you get to that breaking point in your mind and soul where you're like, all right, I'm just turning it off, I'm done. But that's the failure right there at that moment. You failed because just burrow through. Just tell yourself, no matter what, I know it sounds like crap, and I know I'm tired of hearing the kick drum and the snare and the hi-hats, but I'm just going to go ahead and process this to the end, and then I'll delete it. But now I've taught myself I can get to the end of this. Yeah,
and that's sort of been the insight that I've tried to provide. Is actually exactly the same thing. I say never. The only failure, in my opinion, is quitting. You know, otherwise, if you quit, that's proof. That's told to yourself that you failed. Just because other people listen to something and say, this isn't good, like this is and even if you may in your head be like, this is kind of a total fail, it wasn't, because you've really learned something, you've taught yourself to improve, and then for the next time you have that experience. Even if that track doesn't mean selling, let's say like a million copies, that doesn't make it a failure, right? It's a learning experience. It's experience in general. So
what you don't want to. You just don't want to start sitting in front of the computer saying, all right, I'm going to have a good session, and know in your mind that you've never completed one, so you're probably just going to do an 8-bar session. And and it took, trust me, I'm not speaking like I did that when I started. I just got to a place mentally where I was like, I need to teach myself, I need to get to the end of these, instead of having a bunch of projects loaded that are 8-bar loops and they aren't developed to anything. So I was like, this was probably like 10 years ago. I just got to a place where I was like, I'm finishing everything. And now it's so ingrained in me when I sit down at the computer to know in the next hour and a half, I'm going to put a track together. I'm probably going to hate it, but I'm going to put a track together.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I still believe that for most people, like let's say you finish 10 tracks or something, no matter how good you are, you finish 10 tracks, maybe 2 of them are actually to a point where it's like, yeah, this is something special, like worth putting out there, or worth trying to even develop further. And for the really, really great people out there, they have a knack where their percentage is just a lot higher in terms of what they finish being good. And that's kind of, good is so subjective, but I think you know what I mean.
No, absolutely. You're 100% right. Exactly. That's the point. And that's the benefit of, instead of like, I'll finish these things now out of habit, and I don't delete them anymore. I put them saved as a project folder with a certain label to it that I can come back in tomorrow and say, that one thing I did with that synth that was layered with that bass.
Yeah, drop it in
insane.
Here. Yeah.
So I'm going to bring it into this project now. Or I'm just going to open up a whole slew of projects and start just Frankenstein pieces. And all of a sudden something comes together, but you're not really at that point, it's very inspiring because the actual work of sound design is gone and you're just trying to find out how they groove or how they syncopate. And it's so inspiring.
Oh yeah. And it's such a mindset thing too. I mean, I guess this would be a good time to sign off because we could go on for probably 6 hours easy.
I'm pretty sure we'd be here for a few more days.
Yeah, but I think it's that mindset that you have this is what trickles through for people who are good at this. This is what nobody tells you. This isn't what you get in your secret whatever weapons, whatever, however you want it, artillery, full blown nuclear.
It's such a good point, but you're killing me.
It's just the mindset is just, it's huge. If you have that oh yeah, I'm thinking positive about what I was doing instead of okay, like you just said, I've been in this position, everyone's been in this position. Yeah. Everything is kind of working except the kick drum, and you're so focused on the kick drum for the next 12 hours, you're forgetting, oh my God, look at all this great stuff. And so then maybe when you're working on something else, you've got the kick drum right. Now go and take that good thing that you had that you were so happy about, plug it in and see how those work together. If your mind can be at that place where it's I'm not going to have such a high expectation on myself that everything has to be perfect. I'll find some cool elements and then figure out how to maybe marry them together later on. It's just that's then such an empowering feeling, like you're saying, you get this really good sense of accomplishment that, oh yeah, I can bring these together. It doesn't all have to be perfect right away.